Hello and welcome to the Multifamily Investing Academy podcast hosted by me, Charles Dobbins, your host, the founder of the Multifamily Investing Academy, the creator of the Multifamily OS system, and also one of the founders of the hotel to apartment cohort program that helps investors acquire low cost hotels and then recycle them into long-term residencies for massive profits. And we're actually got about 3 under contract right now. It's very exciting. And on this show, we teach you everything you need to know about this business. So sit back, relax, grab yourself a hot toddy, and let's get down to business. Okay, on today's episode, listen, I read as much as I can. I listen to podcasts as much as I can. And if there's ever one that I think I want to talk to you about that I think would be very important for you, today's going to be that type of episode where I recently listened to one of my favorite podcasts, Freakonomics. Now, I was an economics major in college. I absolutely love the topic, love the conversations about it all the time. And Freakonomics is always one that I thoroughly enjoy. And if you're looking for a good podcast that gets your mind thinking, I highly recommend you downloading Freakonomics, and you can listen to it every week. You can go back in and you can look at some of the topics in the past. Crazy topics, absolutely crazy. If you read the book Freakonomics, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, some of the topics that they had in the chapters, that I'm just pulling these off the top of my head. I might be wrong because it's been years since I looked at the book, but one of the chapters was why do drug dealers live with their parents? That was one. And then another one was, why did crime go down in New York City? And their answer for that was a perplexing one. They said the reason why crime went down in New York City in the 90s was because of Roe v. Wade back in the 70s. I got to tell you, I think that's a stretch. I mean, sometimes they come up with some very interesting topics, and sometimes you just got to scratch your head. I know there was another person that writes a very similar series of books, Malcolm Gladwell. I think one of the chapters in one of his books is, why do children born in these 2 months tend to be candidates for the NHL? Now, you go in and you listen to his treatise and you think, oh, that sounds pretty good. But then you Google it and you find everybody totally poo-pooing his theory and discrediting his theory, saying that none of it's true. Look, go and look at both sides. But that's what I love about those types of conversations. And the podcast, specifically the episode that I want to talk to you about, is entitled, "Why is it so hard and expensive to build anything in America?" And when I saw that title, I thought, oh man, I know what that's like, because I'm trying to build now and the prices are just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. But let's, and this was on Freakonomics episode. And the first thing they do is they cite a study back during the Johnson administration in 1968. It was called Decent Home. It was done by the Housing and Urban Development, and a name that kind of has a little history to it. The secretary in charge of Housing and Urban Development was George Romney, former Michigan governor, and the father of Mitt Romney, who we know, and we don't really love Mitt Romney. He's what we call a rhino, and he's he kind of had to become governor of Massachusetts. So, but what happened was what they discovered since that report was done, that construction production has production for virtually every category that we measure in the economy has been growing at least by 2%. But since the 1960s, construction production has flatlined. It has not gone up at all. Remember that productivity is the measure of what goes in and what comes out. So money, time, labor, that's what goes into the production. And then the output, in this particular case, the construction, is what comes out. And since the 1960s, the level of production, the quality of construction output and production has flatlined. It has not increased whatsoever. Other fields have become more productive over the last several decades, except construction. And what happens when we lack the increase in the production in the sector, that means that everything goes up in price. So the construction sector is worth 4% of the GDP of this country. And when the value added by a construction worker today equals the same amount of value added construction back in 1960, there's something very wrong with the industry. Now, so what that essentially means is that a worker today is about 40% less productive than other industries. In other words, a worker today is about 40% less than what he was in 1970. Most other industries are expanding while the productivity of a construction worker is going down. And when productivity goes down, prices rise. So the labor productivity in other sectors have increased by 2% per year, which means that productivity essentially doubles every generation, except in construction. Isn't that crazy? Why is that? They give us an answer at the end, which I think is a very good one. But hold on, let me tell you exactly what I'm talking about. So they looked at what are some of the things that are preventing construction from increasing its productivity. And they threw out a couple of different ideas. And let's talk about some of these. First off, they considered regulation. Second, they thought about the way the industry works. Third, they thought about that there are no incentives in contracting. And then finally, they considered internal and external factors. But what they decided was that there's no one reason that explains everything. Now, let's talk about regulation for a moment. Right now, the city of New York has passed legislation that actually makes it easier to get through regulation, because they found that a lot of these regulation requirements are not creating any value whatsoever. And they're now giving the mayor the power to just overthrow this. So what they're saying is they've implemented new rules that would exempt projects with fewer than 175 units in low density residential areas, and those with fewer than 250 units in commercial, manufacturing, and medium and high density residential areas. And the city analyzed more than 1,000 environmental reviews and found that modest housing projects with certain characteristics consistently had no negative impact. And by exempting these projects, the new rules will speed up environmental review up to about 2 years and save the projects an average of $100,000. So in other words, all of those delays, those regulatory delays, or what they call them, the social voice of people, has done nothing to change the world as they like to make it feel. It's just ran up the cost and slowed everything down. And that could be a reason why construction costs have continued to go up, and productivity has gone down. Some of the other factors that they looked at were things like the lack of capital investment. That wasn't it. The amount of money that goes into construction over the last 40 years has gone up considerably. So it's not the lack of capital investment. They looked at prices of inputs growing faster, like labor costs. Nope, that's not it. Other industries are having the exact same problem. This one is kind of interesting, and we get into a reason why. No R&D built into the profits. Yeah, I can see that. Think about all the local construction companies you have. They're not spending money on R&D, research and development, trying to make their systems better. Other industries are. Construction is not, but they did not chalk that up as to being a dramatic reason for any of the changes. And here's another stat that blew me away. The number of square feet that a contractor builds on average today is exactly the same as they built back in the 1970s. So that gives you an idea of how productivity has just totally flatlined in the construction industry. Why is that? One of the other things they talked about is how the industry lacks incentive to cut prices, especially if you're working with a cost plus product. Well, the price goes up, my profit goes up. If I'm charging 20% of the deal as my fee, I don't care how much the deal costs. Well, if that happens and the prices go up, overall productivity will go down. Another thing that we just talked about was the land use regulations. The way they looked at land use regulations is essentially the incumbents, meaning the current owners of homes right now, are rigging the system against anyone else trying to get in for their own benefit. I mean, just think about what it costs for a young person to buy a house now is totally a component of some of the land use regulations that the incumbent people have added to. Think about it. When you get up in front of a zoning board, they always ask you, where do you live? Well, I live here. Oh, okay, then you can stand up and talk. But if you don't live there, you lack standing. Well, I want to live here, but I can't because of you guys are rigging it against me. So that's another thing that they take into consideration. One chair of the Harvard Economics Department, Professor Glazer, thinks that all that regulation did was ensure that it became very hard for the construction industry to focus on, and get ready for it, mass production. Think about that for a second. We talk about things about minimum lot size. We talk about things about building next to wetlands. If you think about it, if you can't build in Boston because of the lot size requirements and wetlands requirements, you have to go somewhere else to build. You have to go outside of these cities and towns, and you have to build new infrastructure in order to support that demand. And that's a cost that you wouldn't have to necessarily incur when you're in a city that's already been built up. But the people who are the NIMBY people, not in my backyard, well, we don't want you here. You got to go, Western Mass in order to build. Well, if you go out to Western Mass, the demand for housing is still there. I still need a place to live. But if you kick me out and go down there, well, I got to start building up that area. So we end up, requiring, kicking people out. One of the solutions to that is to reducing the land use regulations, land use requirements. So we make the lots smaller so we can build on, that same size lot that we only allowed one home on. Now we can put up a second one because the infrastructure is already there. So those are some of the things that they looked at in this study. But it all comes down to, and this is the punchline here. The punchline is that what is the number one reason that construction productivity is down and flatlined for the last 40 or 50 years is because we can't mass produce. CoStar data says that 3,700 parcels of land, with the median parcel size is about 7.3 square feet. So in the CoStar data, the average size that is for sale to build on is 7.3 acres. Very small. And it'll house about 3.2 units. So just think about that. How can we have mass production when the average size lot is only 7 acres and we can build no more than 3 homes on that parcel? Why would we ever have mass production? Every house is small. Every house is unique. We can't get any benefit from mass production. And think about just around your neighborhood. Who did you call when you needed to have a house built? A local guy. You see, we have little firms are figuring out little things and putting them in little spaces. And that's the description of our construction industry as it stands right now. There are no economies of scale, and we talked earlier on about the cost of the rise of the citizen voice. From 1960 to 1980, the cost to build a mile of highway increased threefold. And that was because of social movements, it was because of legislation, and it was because of judicial decisions that the city of New York is now finding out doesn't really make a difference in the overall scheme of things. It just drives up the cost and slows things down. So the modular building boom is right now at odds with the construction industry of this country. It's dominated by really small companies, and that is why construction productivity has flatlined since the 1960s. And that is something that we need to solve. But it's going to take years. It's going to take changes in people's mindset. But that's, they're trying to do it now. Out in San Francisco, all those billionaires, Steve Jobs' widow, a couple of the others, I can't think of their names right now, they're buying up huge tracts of land out in San Francisco. And they're planning a city. It's like they're going to build a new city, perfectly designed city. And that might be the construction of the future. And that is why construction costs and the construction productivity has been flat since the 1950s. And folks, that is all I have time for today. If you have any ideas of what we might want to talk about in future episodes, if there are any podcasts that you really like, any topics you want me to cover, please reach out to me at info@multifamilyinvestingacademy.com, and I will get it on my show. So thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. We'll be back. In fact, you can expect more episodes every week, and sometimes multiple shows will drop down into your feed. But if you'd like a complimentary copy of my How to Own 1,000 Apartments in 5 Years book, which I'll give you a little tip. It just won an award for one of the best real estate books of the year. Go to How to Own 1,000 Apartments in 5 Years. Go to multifamilyinvestingacademy.com or multifamilyos.com, fill out the form, and my staff will get you a copy of my book. Quick reminder, again, how you can support the podcast. Just click the subscribe button and smash that like button. And if you'd like to check out my YouTube channel, you can check it out at www.youtube.com/Multifamily Investing Academy, where we do a live YouTube event every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern. So take care, everyone. Until next time, just remember what the greatest multifamily guru always says. If you're not making offers, this is nothing more than a very expensive hobby, and we are